Hello, Ranch Green here. It is today, April 28th, 2023. And as far as the rhythm go of the month, I know many of you are not completely up to speed with that. And it's probably also individual, depending on our experience or our attention span, as well as how far we can go into the different realities. The end of the month is always kind of where the energies drop. We begin high and end low, and we are heading for the last week of the month. And typically it begins with around the 22nd. There are scavengers come in, and with them insectoids and androids and transhumanism and what have you. And then it runs that pillar up to the top level of that one, was typically some of the old fifth dimensional that are part of the artificial fifth dimension. And then it skips into our reality field and then start at the top of that one and then work all this way down to everyday life, so to speak. Today we're going to have a rally in Copenhagen. I want to call them rebellious extinction, but they call themselves Extinction Protocol or Extinction Rebellious. I think that is of the other way around, which just makes sense to me, but probably for the same reason. And they are going to show civil inobedience, if that. So everything is, I can feel it in the field. There was a helicopter or a chopper that flew above my head, and they are, all depending on which one it is. This was one of the dark kind, and it feels a little bit like MIB are in play here. So, and I got that on the inside as well. I'm trying not to give it much attention, but it would kind of follow the energies that have been coming in the last couple of days. In the tutorial 7, in the Changemaker material on the Food, Health and Environment project, I'm creating now 2 courses out of that instead of updates, and they will be there as one will be tutorials and the other one will be observations. The observation will run probably for a while, until I kind of know what's going on there. But that's aimed at the change makers and the ones that are trying to actively create some kind of project or some kind of business. And there, these fluctuations, they play a huge part because they are a part of defining our reality. They are part of defining the political environment. Some of I call them shenanigans. That's the easy way to put it. I could go into much more drama if I liked. But I've been in this for 10 years now. So for me, it's become everyday life, where for others, this is still new and fresh. And then it's all very exciting and needs to be talked about and needs to be shared. And for me, it's just, I've been this merry-go-round for over 10 years now. And it's just how it runs. This is how the month is, the good and the bad and the really ugly, like a good old Western movie, right? So this is how it is. It's the Wild West for those of us who activate. This is not into joy and bliss. That's a part of the astral plane. Once you get there into Samadhi, that's astral. It doesn't get more astral than that. And then eventually we flip out of that one and then we get into the raw, true version of what this world is. I remember when I was in Samadhi, that was back in 2014, where I began my meditation practice. That was grand. That was a good time. That's also where I had the whole crystal thing going on, and didn't last long. Okay, so for some, the Samadhi and the bliss states last forever. For some, they isolate themselves just to practice that and then say, that's how I want to spend the rest of my life. And for others, there's not really much choice. And I'm one of the ones that doesn't really have a choice because of who and what I used to be and who and what I am today and what I'm working with. So this is, again, the choice in the new reality challenges. The choices that we make. How are we going to play this out? The end cycle. And this is not doomsday. This is just where everything needs to come to completion. Everything needs to meet up. It's at the end, what was begun must be completed. It's that simple. And we are there now. It's also said in the Gospels, the first will be the last. And whatever we created, we must also complete. So creation, completion, these two things go together. So this is where we are looking into, okay, so this is those of us who are here now. Some are not active and some have not been activated and some are not of this world, and there's a lot of different groups here. But those of us who are part of the original solar system, we have got a kind of responsibility to complete what we began. At least that's how I feel it. You know that. Some of you might not feel it that way. But there's enough to dig into, there's enough to look into, there's enough to work with. There are plenty of possibilities to move into different directions from where we can use information to attribute to what we could define as a world that we want to express and be part of, whether it is within different groups that are putting their foot down and be the opposition, as we are with the people that are joining the rallies, or we are having others that are working with this a little bit more silently. And then those of us like me that are kind of always tied into whatever's going on in the networks, whatever's going on in reality. And some of it I participate in, others I choose not to. I'm just observing it. And then try not to give it too much energy because I don't want to give it more energy. That's sometimes why I don't talk about it. And for those of you who wake up and begin to see these things, that's a little bit, oh, that would be so interesting to talk about this and that and what have you. But remember, sometimes silence is a good thing. Because the more we talk about it, the more we think about it, the more we look at it, the more energy we give. And in the beginning, when we are like children, our energy is not that strong, so it doesn't make a big difference other than just a little bleep. But the stronger you get in your expansions field, the more you can perceive, the more you can process information, the more you're able to work with codes, the stronger your field will get, and the larger impact your thoughts and your ideas and what you have will come in play. So this is where it becomes important to understand what to say and what not to say, what to think about and what not to think about, what to look at and what not to look at. In essence, when to turn your cheek away, not to turn the blind eye, because that's not really functional. Once you get your perception field up and running, whatever you have genetic and energetic affinity with will come your way when the energies in the reality field are for it. And that's why the reality energies shift over the course of months, so the different types of genetics can be activated. And that's something I discovered years ago, especially in Australia, where it was very clear. It's less clear here up in the north. But I know in America and in Britain and other places, I think I have come to the conclusion, I said that years ago, that Denmark is not overly active on that level. They are definitely trying to get it up and running, but I have put my foot down every time, similarly as we have seen with the different ideas that have sprung from America, has sprung from Australia, and these ideas have been part of activating different levels in the activation process that probably would have been better if they had not been activated, because they are interfering a lot and they're allowing for a lot of entities to enter into people's fields once they begin to work with these ideas. Because entertaining an idea is to entertain a code system. Remember, what you look at, you give energy, as I talked about in Future Human Project course 3, I think, or was it 2? No, I think it's or 1, I can't remember. It's one of these courses where I actually talk about why it can be detrimental to our activation process if we look into things that, even though it sounds and is very interesting and is something that we do need to look into at some point, but looking into it too soon, which the counter forces will try to make you do, will then allow them to insert their codes into your field. And then because you're not at that time, at that position to clear it out correctly, then it can grow and become a pattern. And the more you entertain these ideas, the greater the pattern will be, and the more they can steer your activation process in their direction. So this is where we need to course correct. And that's one of the most difficult things in this journey, that to learn the ability to course correct. Many have learned that, oh, I need to investigate this and that and what have you, and this is interesting. And we got so much attention, redirection technology, as I call it, that are pushing us all sorts of different ways where we shouldn't go. And at the same time, we are having a high degree of insectoid genetics in our neural networks, which as the fourth dimensional energies activate more and more gives off the ability or the lack of the ability to focus, the lack of ability to strategize, losing track of time, spacing out, being disoriented, and all of these nice things. They're called something else. I'm deliberately not putting it here so we won't get any disclaimer on that this is against medical advice or against any sorts of community out there that claim to have the answers to everything that we're doing. So this is something that more and more we're seeing more and more generations that are having these issues, including it feels like everybody's around is being diagnosed with it today. Everybody's kind of going in and getting that assessment where they are being told, oh, you have that because now we are on top of it, right? So suddenly everybody has to go on a specific type of medication, and that's the next step. We have had the whole biological alteration mechanics going on, where I'm talking to the last 5 years with the painting blue. And now we're going into the next one that is focusing on the central nervous system. The fifth dimension is connected to the central nervous system and the brain. And we have got the whole peripheral nervous system and the blood and the organs that were part of the artificial fourth dimension, transhumanizing that one with different forms of health technologies. And now we're going into the mind technologies. Now, many of you will ask, is it a good idea or a bad idea, or should I or should I not go on this specific type of medication? And I am not the one to tell you what to do. For some, it's a good idea. For others, it's not. And that depends on how well can you train your own neural network not to space out? How well can you strategize? How well do you keep track of time? How well can you focus when you need to focus? How well are you to discipline yourself in your everyday? If you can't manage that, then perhaps the assistance of different forms of medications might be there. And I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying that there is no clear answer to that one. Similarly, when we're in the whole advanced class 3, where I talked about when things get physical, as in if you break a leg, you go to the hospital. If you get a deep cut that you can't heal yourself, you go and get it sewed. You see the doctor. If you have things that are falling apart in your physical form and needs medical attention, you go to the correct practitioner to make it done. Just be observant of where you go and that there are always energetic ramifications of it. There's always clearing work to be done once you go into the path of activation, or the path of liberation, if you like. So there are this whole, I avoid everything and go out in the rural country and go off grid and don't do anything and live primitively and die an early death because I do not get my broken leg fixed the right way. It's kind of returning to the Middle Ages, right? And of course, people can choose to do that. I'm not to tell you not to do that. I wouldn't do it. If I have something that I can't heal myself, if I can't fix it after a certain period of time, I do use medicine. If I can't deal with whatever is there, and I kind of need assistance in that one, then I would go to whoever I could see would be a fit for my energy system. My personal problem is that there is no one that is a fit for my energy system. Thereby I have to fix it all as much as I can on my own, unless it gets so physical that it demands, let us put it that way, a butcher. Then I need to go and see someone who can mechanically take care of my physical form, bones, structures, muscles, what have you, if I can't fix it myself. And these are some of the things that we need to learn as well. The discernment between when are we capable of dealing with things ourselves, and when do we need to reach out and get a bit of help. But as always, we need to choose our helpers via principle 6. It depends again how many of the principles have you activated. If you're still trotting along with principle 1, just trying to be the first of many as the highest good of the many, and trying to just do good in a normal way and being harmless, which comes with that one, for the highest good of the many technically means to be harmless and not create more distortion, not create unfortunate situations for all involved, creating situations that are of the best outcome for whoever comes your way, be it a life form or a thing or a machine or whatever it is. You know how to balance balance the energies in principle 2 and always choose the right course of action. That also leads to lesser form of karma. You know where principle 3, where to put your attention and where not to put your attention. And you have learned the dynamics of reciprocity, where you understand what you are, what you exist of, the energies you have impact on your reality on that level. And by that, you learn by principle 1, 2, and 3, how to operate and manage your energies correctly. And you have begun to got your inner knowledge, which means the holographic teaching system has activated in your energy system. Then you can begin to focus about correct partnerships, right? Until then, just manage principle 1, how to be harmless. And that's why here in the updates, I began with the challenges. I began with loving kindness. Go back to that one. If you don't know what else to do, go into samadhi, go into loving kindness, go into meditation where you just feel a kindness in your heart and you just radiate golden energy. If that's all you can do, then do that. At least that takes away most of the astral entities. It also feeds others of them. And again, it depends on your type of genetics. If you are original warrior, well, then your method will be different. But for most that are part of the 4th cycle, the loving kindness is the best action to take until you master the other principles to their degree that they deserve. And again, that is also why when we talk about many of the older spiritual teaching systems, they're all love and light. But it has turned into a deceptive love and light where there's not the insight, the self-insight, the inner work, the self-adjusting, the scrutinizing, investigative mindfulness that has been taken out of the equation. It's just kind of, as long as I love everybody, as long as I'm compassionate, well, then everything's good. As long as I'm just compassionate, and then people are not seeing all the other stuff that's going on in their field and that they are affecting everybody else with all the things that they are not looking at. That's denial. That's using love and light for denial and not seeing who and what they are. That's going in and say, I don't want to look at it because it's too dangerous. It's too discomforting. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at that thing that's right in my field. It makes me feel so uncomfortable, but I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at it. Because that's easier, right? But once it's there, it's because you're ready to deal with it. What comes your way, that's the law of reciprocity. That means you must deal with it and not just shy away, and you say, well, Randy, you just said turn the other cheek. Yes, this is where the discernment comes in. What's in your field needs some course of action. Is the action to look directly at it and deal with it and transform it, or is the action to look it away and not deal with it? But all depending on what it is and how close it is playing dead the best option? We're here talking about fight or flight. Is that the best option? Or is it the best option to, which is a new thing that come up, I heard it several times, fawn, as in kind of just go humble. I've seen some of the ants when they come into my field, they fawn, they crawl towards me with kind of with their paws or their forelegs bowed in and head down, literally, as you're seeing also people bowing down, going to some kind of royalty. Not that I'm royalty, but it's a way of showing they are not territorial, they're not claiming territory, and they're not up for a fight. They are just showing they are just there as messengers. So that's the messenger position. So that's also a way to go around with whatever's in our field. And sometimes if we do the fawning and do the loving kindness, just sit in that one and not focus on and not look at it, then it will walk away. Sometimes it's just a visitor. Sometimes it will reoccur. And if it reoccurs, well, then we have to deal with it. But again, it depends on who you are, what you are, how far you got the Pillar Project, what cycle you're part of, and what system you came from, and why you're here, and what program you're under, and what contract you're under. So this is, again, the differences in the new reality challenges, where working on the inner realities is not clear cut. This is the solution. This is not what if, then what, then that will happen. As if, then what? That's not the way we work with things anymore, because it's not linear. The more you expand, the more you grow, you will see the 6 layers of perception, as I talk about in the psychic energy, the psychic processes, and keeping the psychic energetic balance. And these are difficult sciences, but that's part of the challenge. If you want to activate that's what you'll need to activate into. It's not just about getting the sight and getting the clairvoyant abilities. Even people that are just on the ghost level, on the astral plane that get clairvoyant, they're kind of, oh yeah, just put off the white shield, that's astral, right? You just block it out. And that works fine on the astral plane, but it doesn't work fine in the fourth dimension. Similarly, as when we're talking about some of the mental processes, yes, do mindfulness, blank your brain and blank slate it and don't think about things. That will also cut down some connection points and access points from some of the entities in the artificial fifth. But if you activate your genetics and you begin to truly activate your mind field, then you will get into the artificial fifth and deal with the cubes. And there you can't just send them love and light, because cubes are technology. They don't respond to love and light. So we are on different levels, and that's the discernment process that needs to be reconsidered in the activation process. Some of you will activate voluntarily, and others of you will activate because you have a timer that activates you now due to the circumstances of reality, due to this shutting down of the sun and the shift of the reality grid that are transforming our planet as we speak. So with all of that, years ago, many of you followed me for years, we have been in ups and downs and different challenges, and now we're in a new set of challenges, and it will continue to do so. That's why I made the change maker material and the transition sciences. These teach you how to deal with this constantly ongoing as part of your life. We do the transition science, learn to master the transformative energy system. And with that, what our body is, what our physicality is, what our psyche is, what the subconscious is, what the astral plane is, what the deeper layers are, what the fourth dimension is, similar to our mind processes and mindfulness and how we think and what we look at and what we investigate and what we are studying and how we study and how we integrate that and how we put it into implementation. So it's not just words and ideas and thoughts in our heads, but actually something we put into our everyday life and unfold into as some sort of practice. Not as a ritual, not as I do this every day, then things will be good and fine, but in a flexible manner where we show we are mastering these things. And that's part of activation. It's always been like that. It's just because the New Age culture just said, well, activation is being clairvoyant, seeing angels and talking to spirits and being out in nature and seeing all of the fairies and devas and what have you. And that's all beautiful. That's good. But that's also astral. So the New Age only activate into the astral plane. And yes, there's a little bit of shenanigans there, but the methods to avoid this is simple on the astral plane. It is just being love and light. If you're just there, then you will be in that vicinity of the astral plane that only goes with what we call the infantile spirits. They are drawn to that kindness. But they also sustentate from you just so you kind of know it. And they create energetic parasites. And most of these little critters, they are actually connected to the TG and the technology and the artificial fourth. It's a kind of a blind spot technology that pushes people into, I think I have activated. Yes, you're seeing a lot of interesting stuff, but you're just in another pocket reality where you get lost. It's the plane of dissolution or illusions, plane of illusions and disillusion, because you kind of, to get out of it, you need to burst the bubble and then see things as they truly are. And that's the hard one. So many have gone into, as for those of you who studied a little bit more into the practice of the Buddha, of Buddhahood, and as I keep saying many places, I don't really understand that, because as I recall from my own incarnation, I chose the path of Bodhisattva and then I went into the Thunderbolt path. So I have not done the path of Buddhahood. That's for a specific type of lunars. And since I'm not lunar, I didn't take that path. But there are still practices there. And one of them, it is specifically designed for a specific group of males that have which we're also seeing today. I've listened a little bit into, because of my work with Josh, I've listened into some of the Buddhist monks and what have you. And they are so mental. And they're lost in all the mental perceptions, and they're so good at saying all the right things. But the question is, the energy they emit does not match what's coming out of the mouth. And that's another level of discernment. Are people coherent? I haven't been coherent. Nobody's coherent. Nobody's perfect. But how much is the attention on it? As in people, including the love and light communities, you heard them say so many beautiful things. And why they're saying they're completely high on that bliss energy of how good they are. But when it comes down to, you just need to push them a little bit, and then you get something entirely else, which I've experienced many times. Then you get something where it kind of say, whoa, that was a dark one. What's the behind all of that sheep clothing and all that kindness? There is something behind it, something that's trying either to cloak itself or on the path of redemption. So it depends on how well are you actually to activate the different forms of energies around you for good and for ill. That's also part of the law of reciprocity, where we learn the hard way what we are and what our true function is, and how far we actually got in the Pillar Project, and how hard we were hit by the timeline event. Because that will also activate and show us. And also what we chose afterwards. Which wars we've been part of, which unfinished business we have got there, which alliances we were stupid enough to make while these people were still in their peaceful environment, and we were working together in science projects, and then the war hit the system, and they changed, and they collaborated with the incoming colonizing races, and suddenly our best buddies became our worst enemies. And they are still lingering on because we created connection points, and we tied up together in projects as part of the Pillar Project on different timelines, and how if they have turned and twisted into something else and arrested because of it, well, then sometimes what comes to us in the form and an ant used to be one of our old best buddies. And they're kind of, okay, well, what happened to you, boy? And you have to kind of say that, because some of these ants, they appear a little bit like dogs. And they kind of say, what happened to you, boy? And it was just look at you and say, with big ant eyes, I made the wrong decision. Don't you remember me? And then I just have to go in and activate and say, oh yeah. And then I get them into the holographic version, use their energy system, say, oh, this is who you were. And then that just dissolves in 2 seconds. But that's why they come, because they come due to the fact that they have lost the ability to resume what they were. And we still have a chance in this physical form. We are still in what we call the vicinity of what is classified as progressive organic life forms. And I think that's a responsibility as part of the new reality challenges that we must take, even though it's very hard, and we have the inner child, and the inner child will scream and kick and say, I don't want to go down that path. I still have portions of me that responds like an inner child. Just pressure me enough and I'll just behave like a 5-year-old. We all have that. And the challenge is there to acknowledge, okay, now my whole system is responding as a 5-year-old. And this is where we can use some of the mindfulness practices. Instead of saying, I am a 5-year-old, we can then go in and say, well, right now my whole system responds as if I was a 5-year-old, and I'll take care of these not so developed principles and processes in me that are now unfolding their energetic contact for growth. Not while we're in it, we're just in it. We just get flushed with all of these electrochemical processes and different forms of substances that comes from our emotional field, responding with our periphery and central nervous system, and by that kicking in different types of neurotransmitters and different types of chemicals that makes the body respond in a specific way, which we interpret as this or that feeling, and we get flooded by it. And there we sit down with the double hand position and calm down that electrochemical flood if we can, or we just go amok and then do what needs to be done and make sure we don't have anybody else in the process. Run out the house instead of yelling at your partner, or go into the forest and sit and calm down or whatever until all of these chemicals are subsided, and then learn the hard lesson, how much that affects your emotional field, how much residuals it gives, and how much link up that also gives to different forms of energetic parasites. And then learn to deal with these energetic parasites before they are allowed to release their enzyme that triggers that pattern you have, that emotional pattern. So that's the psychological work too. And that's ongoing for the rest of our lives. But that's the expanded version of psychotherapy. We learn where the emotions come from. We learn the patterns. We know the origin. We know the trauma that's behind it. And then we know, this is how I feel. This is how I respond. This is how my body acts when this happens. And then we go from this is how I feel, this is how I respond to, this is how the body responds to this process. This is how the patterns of change, they activate when this happens. And then we go into the next level of the observer and say, okay, where's the energetic parasites that ignites this? What are the things that triggered it? What are the triggers here? Is it the energy in the surroundings? Is it other people? What are the triggers? And then get what the triggers are so that we can not avoid the triggers, but once we are in the vicinity of these triggers, we are then observant of there is a potentiality that this pattern will ignite. And if it does, then we're observant of how to deal with it the best way possible. Because we cannot avoid being in a world of energy to respond in the sea of energies that we are part of. Remember the dream I had when I began this with the astral plane. I saw this wild ocean because I was up in upheaval. Then the ocean was in upheaval, all sorts of weird shit and stuff. I still remember that dream. There were so many weird things in that ocean. And I wanted to cross that ocean like, from the Exodus of the Red Sea. Part the waters of the Red Sea. And I was in my dream actually trying to, can I part it? Can I walk on water here? And then this is interesting enough because we have that. You have Moses that parted the Red Sea, right? To get from Mitzrayim into the land of milk and honey. And then you had Jesus that walked on water. And there's clearly a connection there. The others were in a boat and he was walking on the water. So what's the challenge here? There's of course, when you're in the fourth cycle, you learn to calm the waters so you can cross it or divide the waters. That's creating a path of liberation technically through the astral plane. The other one, the mental one, where you learn to walk on water. But in that dream, this was, for me, the whole point of the dream was that, yes, there's a lot of weird stuff in that ocean, but if I calm myself enough, then the waters subside. And then like a tide, it removes itself. It's not high water. It becomes the low tide. And then I could walk across following the soil, the mud beneath, the sand beneath. And yes, I saw the critters, but they had no fuel because they were not fueled by the ocean. Once the ocean came back and it was high tide and I got all emotional upheaval, then they became monsters. But once I calmed down, they become these little weird things that was just lying crawling on the sand and not really being able to do much because they couldn't grow in size. And that was a good show of how these little critters were in my field. So again, these are some of the psychodynamics that we are to learn. And I know many of you are not schooled as a psychotherapist. And for some of you, I actually would say, aside from going to a psychotherapist or do some kind of work on that level, why not do the education? Why not study it as part of, if you need to study something, instead of studying something you know is connected to forces that will not really assist you, well, why not learn the dynamics of how your emotional field works? There's plenty of information to get everywhere. And yes, some of it will not be the right teacher. Some of it will not be in alignment with what you need to learn. But it's still a good idea to understand, okay, like you are interested in how does the atom works? How does the organic vessel works? What is good health? What is the correct type of nutrition? What's the correct type of nutrition for me? So we always begin on a general level as in kind of what is the idea, what are the different paradigms about health or science or psychology, what have you. That's the general paradigm, understanding that. And then going in and say, okay, this is the general paradigm. This is what they have agreed on, because all science is an agreement between the different groups that are studying it, creating some kind of order in it. So this is what we all can agree on. And then there's the fringe. And that's where I say to you, okay, the fringe is you. So how does that apply to you? Which of these things can you apply to your own dynamics and then add more to them so that they match what you're experiencing by practicing the scientific method on your own experiences? So studying sciences is not as much as getting the answers. It is just as much to learn the method. And that method is also when you study the transformative energy system. It's not as much to understand what the dynamics are. It is just as much to understand the method and then tailor it into the way it works with your energy system, which means that you need to grow a pair of balls. You need to grow strength in trusting that, yes, I do this and I might create some kind of floor. I might actually, this is trial and error, and I might fail a lot of times. But this is not about becoming a success. This is about experiencing enough so you can begin to deduce and observe, okay, this is what's going on in my field, as in not that I own this field, but these are the fields that are in me and how do they operate. So that's again where we take everything that we have studied. It's not just about getting information. It's about integration, implementation of the information, the 3 I's. Information, integration, implementation. Integration means it becomes part of you. Implementation means you put it into practice. So these are some of the things that I will suggest that you look into in the month of May, because today is the 28th, and that's the end of the month, but it's also the 3 days before the next month begin. And that's where we can plan for, as in kind of, okay, if I am to put some kind of headline on the month of May that technically began on the 20th, and I want to use that as part of some sort of discipline where I keep it as a headline, put it on the fridge, saying, okay, this month I will work with the 3 I's, or this month I will work with the 3 D's, or however, whatever you come up with. That's another way also to structure your time. And we're talking about, is it difficult for you to structure your time? Is it difficult for you to create discipline? Is it difficult for you to organize your information? And we are all having these ups and downs. And even me, I kind of, one day I work with some things and the next day is completely forgotten, which is why I ensure complete everything on the day. Because I know if I'm in the middle of a project, the next day I'll probably be on a new timeline, or reality energies have changed, or something else will come in that will then be important on that day. Which goes with the gospel saying the prophet has no place to rest his head. As in both, we can't expect anyone to work with us, but it also have the other one that says, yeah, you can't sleep on your laurel, right? You have to constantly be on top of stuff. And that means every day is a work day. Every day is a day of challenge. Every day is a day of discipline. Every day is a day where you can grow energetically and emotionally and mentally into a higher level of methodology where you learn to deal with whatever is in front of you. And that's the goal of the work, people. To learn to deal with whatever's in front of you in a way that makes you energetically as harmless as possible, energetically as balanced as possible with whatever comes your way, in a manner that you know when to give energy and when not to give energy. The law of reciprocity. So whatever is in your field, you will not spread it more into others, similarly as we're talking about the rules of engagement, and clear it out and learn the correct clearing processes. That's part of the 4th dimension. Law of reciprocity is the main ruling principles of the law, the 4th dimension. These are the dimensions of our energy system. 1, becoming harmless. Dimension 2, learning to be in balance. Dimension 3, learn where to put our energy, where not to put our energy. Dimension 4, learning how we affect our surroundings and what comes back for how we affect it, because there's always a flow out and a flow back. That's the law of reciprocity of law of cause and effect. And then we have the dimension 5. That's all about the true knowledge, the correct teaching system, the correct co-systems. And then you have dimension 6. That's all about the correct partnership and how you collaborate and work correctly so that you achieve the original potentiality to reconnect to the holographic metaverse of the true progressive worlds. That was part of the Pillar Project in each and one of the pillars, in different versions and under different, what we could say Pillar 1.7 was all about ourselves, our energy system, and a template. Pillar 2.8 was all about others and how to interact with others. And Pillar 3 was all about reality. And Pillar 4 was all about governance. And Pillar 5 was about technology. And Pillar 6 was about how to resume to the original worlds. Again, all mirrored into principle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And 7 is correct commitment. And principle 8 is correct use of energy. And principle 9 is correct use of power. All of this in different pillars where we'll learn to deal with different challenges that would put our energy system in that situation, in that moment, in that experience where we would choose via the principles and via the rules of engagement and via the laws of energy, how to make the right choice in the challenge that was in front of us. And that still applies. So for those of you who haven't begun the transition sciences yet, and for those of you who are still a little bit kind of, should I not begin this? Well, if you have gone so far and nothing has happened, well, two possibilities. Either is that you have no viable genetics left, so there's nothing to activate, and then you have to come to terms with that. Or two, you're under such a stronghold by the factions, they're not allowing you to do that, and then you have to choose if you want to do the path of liberation. Or three, it's just because you're damn lazy, or you're full of fear, or you are it's just too challenging and you're not ready for the challenge yet. And still, that's not how I work. I go headstrong into anything. And yes, that has given me a lot of bruises, and I do not recommend my way of doing stuff. But I would say, though, that sometimes when there's something that we need to do and we shy away from doing it because of either out of fear or out of comfort zone or out of some other reason that we think is so much more important than the actual importance of being who we truly are and connect to our true energy system and being part of the original systemic races that we once belonged to, well, then reality has a tendency to give us that kick in the butt that gets us back on track. And the way that the world is going, we will get more kicks in the butt. And there are different ways to go with this. Deal with the kicking when it comes, or just go up front and say, okay, I know this is coming, like the climate change and the climate challenges and all the different things. We had heard that for years, for 20 years or more. And we did not do anything until the shit hits the fan. And the question is, are you the one that are preparing and getting ready and know what to deal with it before it gets bad? Or are you the one that rather deal with stuff when shit hits the fan? And you got poop all over the place. And then you have to do the deep cleaning instead of just preparing, knowing that would come not out of fear, not because you want to put a wall around you of self-protection, but because you are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, going in with an open mind, knowing this is coming. So the question is, which kind of personality structure do you have? The one that shies away and then do it when you're forced to do it? The one that pretends that you're all okay, and then you get into a situation where you see you are not, and then you are either trying to worm your way out of the self-responsibility and self-adjusting, or are you going headstrong in and practice and train yourself to be differently? Or are you just the one that are still in oblivion? 3 personality types, we can come up with a lot of other stuff. Perhaps you should actually look into what kind of personality type are you, not via the Enneagram or your astrological chart or your birth sign or whatever, but look at yourself. Look at the way that you have responded to challenges so far. Look at the way you have looked upon the things that are in your life. And growing up and becoming an adult is difficult, just within the base program. And how do you respond just to the base program challenges? Are you one that goes in and tries to figure out how to solve it? Or are you the one that shies away? Or are you the one that leaves it to others? Or are you depending on others to fix it for you? Or are you relying on teachers to tell you what to do, and onward and so forth? What's your personality structure? How independent are you? How codependent are you? These are some of the things that are good to look at. Because once you get to principle 5, independence become a main trait. Being able to stand on your own 2 feet and being truly sovereign is a main trait. Principle 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all codependent principles. But once you get to the principle 5, that's where you need to learn to stand strong in your own light. Because only if you stand strong in your own light can you form correct partnerships. Because a partnership that is due to codependence or insecurity or emotional needs is not a correct partnership. That's codependent, insecurity, and electrochemical energy connection points that are filling up the desire field. It's nothing to do with a true, correct teamwork where people can work together to progress and develop into the highest potentialities. So with that little podcast here, we'll set the theme for May, and I suggest you work with that one. And I will come with a podcast either later in May or in the beginning of June, because I would like you to work with this in the month of May, because we're getting closer to in June, we are getting into solstice, and that means the peak of the year. So we are here having that possibility these months, April, May, and June. These 3 months are where we lay the foundation for the year. And this year is all about correct commitment. And correct commitment is founded on who are you as a person, because that defines how you commit. If you're codependent, you commit via your codependent dependencies. That means that the systems that runs, I can't stand on my own 2 feet. Or are you too sovereign? That means that correct commitment is all about proving how good you are as a single being. That's service to self. That's the dark negative side of the 5th cycle. And the science is using that the wrongful way, because you want to prove that you're right and not work to find solutions as a team. And then there is also this kind of, are you committing to this one because you are insecure and you're using this as a skeleton, as a crutch, so that you have someone to tell you what to do because you're too afraid to find your solutions on your own? Then the commitment is wrong as well. So what is correct commitment for you this year, and how you're going to unfold it? And what's your personality matrix? What are the work areas that you need to look at? And put that into some kind of energy work where you begin to challenge these weaknesses in your personality matrix. Because whatever is weak must be strengthened, and it's only strengthened through the correct understanding of how it works, transforming it to its highest potentiality, so we reach the highest purity standards, the highest purity rate, the highest emotional standards, which is also purity standards, but they go with mastery of understanding who and what we are, our flaws and warts and all, and learning to deal with that in a proper manner. So when it comes our way, we respond in a manner so we every time chip away a bit of how we are creating distortion. Nobody's perfect to begin with, but we can create less and less distortion. And that's the point of the work that we are doing. Becoming harmless first and foremost. And then mastering the energies once we have mastery, the ability to be harmless. And that means to not create distortion in self and others and reality. Thank you.